Hey community, it is Ryan Frank and welcome to another episode of the KidzMatter Podcast. So grateful that you've tuned in today. Today's a special episode as you're going to hear from my friend Doc Hunsley. More about that in just a moment. I sure hope that we'll see y'all at the KidzMatter Conference. It's happening September 24th, 25th, and 26th in Evansville, Indiana. As we record this, just a little over 3 months away. You can experience over 200 specialized ministry breakouts. You'll be able to meet over 100 great resource providers, organizations that can come alongside of you to serve your children's ministry. 6 powerful main stage sessions, and someone will even win a car. That's right, we're giving away a Mini Cooper. It could be you. The KidzMatter Conference is the leading event for children's ministry leaders and their teams. Go learn more and get your tickets at thekidsmatterconference.com. That's thekidsmatterconference.com. Today's a special episode of the KidzMatter Podcast because we are replaying for you a session from our KidzMatter magazine live event that happened just the other day. This was a great event with 8 breakouts. It all happened virtually, but hundreds of you register, and it was a tremendous event. I'll be sharing more of these breakouts with you in the weeks and the months to come. But today you're going to hear from Doc Hunsley. Doc is the founder of SOAR Special Needs Ministry. And today he's going to talk to you about, do I really have kids in my special needs ministry? Are special needs kids and families on my radar? If you're currently ministering to kids and families impacted by special needs, you're going to be encouraged and challenged. If you know you need to do more in this area, you'll be moved and challenged as well. Now, for those of you that are enjoying today's podcast, the quality, this is a Zoom recording, so the quality is not great, but you're going to get the content. I hope that you enjoy and that you're blessed, and go check out Doc's ministry, SOAR Special Needs Ministry, and learn how they can help you in your church. Thanks again for tuning in to today's podcast. Let's get this show on the road. Here's Doc Hunsley. Doc Hunsley.
Well, I'm going to jump right in. Got a lot to go. Again, I'm Doc Hunsley, and I'm the executive director and founder of SOAR Special Needs. And tonight we're going to talk about how to deal with the difficult child in your KidMin. So let's just kind of go and jump right in and see how we go here. Again, I'm with SOAR Special Needs. We're in Overland Park, Kansas, the Kansas City area. One of the main things I do is come alongside churches and empower them in welcoming families with disabilities, help you create ministry, welcoming individuals with special needs or disability, or help you take what you already have and take that to the next level. Quick story about myself. This is my inspiration. Everyone calls me Doc. That's my nickname because I'm actually a pediatric ER doctor. And I got sick taking care of my patients and almost died and should have died and ended up being forced out on long-term disability. And then my second son, Mark, was born. And when he was 8 months old, had his first seizure, lasted over 4 hours. By the time he was 18 months, we got the diagnosis of Dravet syndrome. And then finally at 2, diagnosis of autism. And finally, we understood first time in our life how difficult it is to be a parent of a child with special needs, and including how difficult it is to find a church and children's ministry to accept our child. And I happened to be at the time, I was fortunate enough to be the children's pastor of our church and trying to do that there. And then almost 14 years ago now, my son was cured of everything when he was born into heaven at the age of 5.5. So we learned all the highs and lows of being a parent, then walked through the grief of losing a child with special needs. And it's now been, it was 10 months after that we launched SOAR, where we come alongside churches. And to date now, I've now trained up over 600 churches throughout the United States and 19 countries around the world. I do have a handout for this. You can scan this QR code, or you can email me at doc@soarspecialneeds.org. I'll have that again later, but doc@soarspecialneeds.org. Our website's there at the bottom of the slide, but just put doc@soarspecialneeds.org. And I'm happy to send you my handout for this. So let's get into it. the difficult child. Have you seen this child in Kidman? If you have, raise your hand, nod your head. Many times, we end up responding to the behavior or of the situation instead of to the individual. And we need to frequently ask questions. Why is this happening? And what is the trigger? And one question I want to challenge you, have you ever asked, does this child have special needs or a disability? Does this child have autism? Or do you maybe think, we don't need anyone, we don't have anyone in our ministry with special needs or disabilities in our KidMin. It's just, bad behavior. Well, I want to challenge you with that and help you realize that most of the times, most of these really difficult behaviors that we're having are actually individuals with special needs and disabilities. And so let's look at some of the statistics that we have today that really just open our eyes. Like I said earlier, 27% of the population today has a diagnosis of special needs disability, making them the largest minority group in the United States. And currently, 1 out of every 6 kids has a diagnosis of special needs. 1 out of every 4 adults has a disability. And for autism, it's 1 out of every 36 births has a diagnosis of autism. Then the thing that's mind-blowing is the divorce rates for our families is estimated to be 90%, 90. But what happens and why we don't realize that these individuals that are having behavior in our ministry is because for every one person you see who appears disabled, there are 80% more of the people, at least 4 more people who are disabled but don't look it. One of my great friends here, you'd think she looks wonderful and everything's fine, but you'd have no idea she is profoundly disabled. And so there's many things that can be a part of this. It could be a lot of mental health, traumatic brain injury, learning disability. Autism is right there along with that as well. And we need to keep that into account as we think through that. One of the other things I want you to think about is, what is the percentage of special needs in your local school? And then what is it in your KidMin? In local schools right now, the national average is about 15%. What is that number in your KidMin? I'm going to take a bet that it's probably not 15%. And if it's not, we need to ask the question, why? Because with that 15%, if our school district has 15% with special needs, they're in our community. We need to be witnessing to them, and effective evangelism means that the makeup of our KidMin is the exact same as that of our local school districts. It shouldn't be any different. So why is having a special needs ministry or disability ministry important? Well, first off, 90% of individuals with special needs and disability don't attend any church. It's the largest unmet people group in the United States. And they're right there in our backyard. 1 out of every 4 homes that surround our church have that. And we need to realize that. But the scary thing is today, only 11% of churches in the United States actually welcome families with disabilities. And about 89% right now don't welcome families. They actually turn families away because they don't know what to do and they're scared. And that's not biblical. We need to change this. And in my experience, the vast majority of KidMin leaders I've met want their ministry to reach kids in their community and grow. So where's the disconnect when it comes to individuals with disabilities? If the KidMin leader has not experienced disability through a friend or a family member, then they are probably ignorant to the fact that disability affects every single community, all ethnicities, all ages, and all social economic classes. But now let's look at the Bible. If you look in the Bible for when Jesus walked the earth, 75% of his miracles were done on those with disabilities. He healed the lame, he healed the blind, he healed the deaf. He really was the very first special needs pastor. And we need to realize that every individual with disability is still created in the image and likeness of God. And it's a biblical mandate to welcome these families. It's Luke 14. And that talks about the great wedding banquet, which represents the church. And the bridegroom came to Jesus and said, hey, look, I've invited all my family and friends, and there's still room at the table representing the church. And Jesus immediately replies and says, and here we have pick it up in Luke 14, verse 12, where he says, then he also said to him who invited him, when you give a dinner or a supper, do not ask your friends, your brothers, your relatives, nor rich neighbors, lest they also invite you back and you be repaid. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you shall be repaid at the resurrection of the just. What we don't realize a lot of the time is that this is actually a call to bring those with disabilities into the church, because those with disabilities need the church just as much as the church needs those with disabilities. And the whole reason Jesus says you will be blessed, your church will be blessed. And it's a great model of inclusion. And it's so important that actually Jesus gives the exact same command, the verses that follow it right away. So if you really want to be more like Jesus, you will minister to individuals with disabilities. And then we look at 1 Corinthians 12:23, where it says the parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And on those parts of the body that we think are less honorable, we bestow the greater honor. And then what I love is John 9, verses 1-3, where, we find out that, the disciples are asking who's the fault to have sin for someone to have a disability. But Jesus says, now as Jesus passed by, he saw a man who was blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. Individuals with disabilities, they are there to show the glory of God, and we all need them, and we can learn from them. Because you see, people with disabilities in the view of Jesus are no different than those without. They belong as a body of believers and are capable of using their unique giftedness to do God's work. So in other words, we are all created on purpose and for a purpose. And we need to move forward with that. Our attitude towards those with disabilities needs to be shaped by God. There are many diagnoses and descriptions of disabilities, but ultimately we're talking about people. We're talking about kids, not conditions, syndromes, or label. Just remember that each individual is created in the image of God and has immense innate value that we got to remember. And a disability, no matter what kind or what severity, doesn't make anyone less of a human being. Every living, breathing person has a spirit that's capable of responding to the Holy Spirit. And we need to be able to welcome them into our KidMin. So what is a disability ministry? Let's talk about this, and then we'll get into how we handle the behavior. So it exists to impart the word of God in the hearts of all individuals in an engaging and understandable manner to teach them to love, know, and honor God. And basically, the church needs to be a place of refuge for families with special needs, where they know that the parents know that their child is being loved on and taught the love of Jesus. So there should be 4 goals of a disability ministry. First, you need to open the door to share the gospel with families affected by special needs and introduce them to a personal relationship with God. Second, we want to integrate those with disabilities into the life of the church and give them opportunities to actively serve God. Third, we want to enable the church to serve as a witness to the community by meeting their spiritual, physical, and social needs of families affected by special needs. And lastly, we want to become a belonging community that's ministry with and by. Everyone needs to be present, invited, welcomed, known, accepted, supported, cared for, befriended, needed, and loved. That's what we're talking about. So you might be saying, well, we don't know how to start, what to do. You start small. You just start with what you have. Meet the current needs that you have. You may only have 1 or 2 kids. That's how I started when I had our ministry originally. We had 3 individuals. Over 8 years, that grew to serve over 800 families with disabilities. Went from 20 volunteers to 2,500 volunteers. That's the blessing God promises you. But you start where you're at, meet their current needs, and focus on those individuals. Help them in being able to get the most that they can. You can provide buddies, and I can teach you on how to do that. You want a designated special needs champion who can help you with this. Be a cheerleader for this this ministry. It might be you. And they don't have to be on staff. They can definitely be a volunteer, and it could even be a parent. But what works well is having a buddy. It's a one-on-one person who is a guide to the side, a volunteer, and they share the love of Jesus with the individual. They ensure the safety of them. They allow independence when appropriate, and help the individual get the most out of the teacher-generated curriculum. And you encourage them to interact with the rest of the class and their peers. But we want to focus on the abilities, not their disabilities. What do I mean with that? For instance, you're doing craft time and they have fine motor difficulties. Instead of having them struggle with cutting out something with scissors, you can cut out the craft for them and then let them color the craft. That's now their craft, and they did it. We need to be positive, especially when talking with the parents. Tell them all the positive things. We don't need to tell them all the negative things. Obviously, never be left one-on-one, and we want to know techniques to encourage success. So let's start talking about how we can be successful and deal with the difficult behaviors that we have. This is a step-by-step guide that I've put together that has been extremely successful. It's a 3-part systematic way to help the individual that you're buddying. Sequence starts with the least amount of help and moves to the most amount of help. So first you tell them what you want them to do. If that doesn't work, then you show them what you want them to do. And finally, if that doesn't work, you help them do what you want them to do. So let's break this down to each one. Let's do say. First, you repeat what the teacher said to do. Repeat the action words. What are some of the action words that you may say to give the individual a piece of the information? Tell them that first step that they need to take. How do you know what to repeat? Well, here's the thing. The volunteer, the buddy must be listening and not having the phone out so they can be being a part of that. How do you know if they actually heard what you're saying? Well, you watch them watching the teacher. You know what their listening looks like, and you look for them to take action. Now, if they don't take action while they're doing, and they're looking at their peers to imitate what they're doing, that's still more independent than actually moving on the next step. But if they're not doing any of these things, then we can move on to the next step. And that is show, where we actually model the instruction for them. And when should you model the teacher's instruction? Well, when they don't follow instructions after you say how to do it, when they're not paying attention or understand what the teacher is saying, or when the instruction involves multiple steps. Our individuals may be more successful with just being shown one step at a time. Many times in classrooms with our neurotypical kids, we give multiple steps at a time. If we have an individual with special needs or learning difficulties, they're not going to be able to grab all that. So we need to break that down for them. And then finally, if that's not working, we go to the last step. And this is the most hands-on. This is do. We actually do the instruction with the individual. So when do you do the teacher's instruction? Well, when they refuse after you modeled the instruction. You also do it if they're too distracted to do it on their own, and when they need to see it again after a failed attempt. How do you know when to stop? Well, you stop when you feel physical resistance, that they don't want to be touched. You just stop. When you see signs that they don't want to be touched at all, like cringing, moving away, slapping your hand with that. When they actually start to do the action, you stop. Without your help, you stop. And here's the one we always forget. You stop if the behavior worsens. Many times we try to plow through even though that behavior is happening. So let's now talk about behavior, problem behavior. It's totally easy to pretend that the problem behavior won't happen, or when it does happen, it won't happen again. And we may want to be like this ostrich and put our head in the sand and act like it's not going to be there. But we need to remember you're never alone, and we can always ask for help. We want to try some techniques that we'll discuss here in just a minute. We can ask, for other buddies to help. We can ask the teacher to help. We can ask, our kidmin leaders, our pastors, or children's pastor, whoever it might be, to help. And there's a lot of people who can give us assistance in helping us figure out what to do. Now let's break down what is problematic behavior. How do we define that? Problematic behavior is actually defined by the environment and the toleration level of people, the space, the activities, and the expectations. I've got a lot more experience with dealing with problem behavior, so it may take a bit more before I really feel that might be a problem. But someone else who isn't used to it might, if someone's just looking wrong or not wanting to sit down, feel that that's problem behavior. So it's all different for all of us, but that doesn't lessen it as behavior. The other thing we have to remember is all behavior is a form of communication. This is vital. We can't forget that all behavior is a form of communication, and it's our job to figure out what they're trying to tell us. Important job of the buddy, the individual working with them, is to have clear guidelines to know what they should be able to handle on their own and when to seek help and have instructions. Now, what I would say is if you see new problematic behavior that occurs more than twice, I suggest that you try to figure out what's shaping that behavior, because they're trying to tell you something that's doing it. Now, when problem behavior occurs, and let's get back to the main point here, when a behavior occurs, what do you do? We've got our angry child. What do? First and most important thing, you remain calm. You have that poker face. You don't show that you're getting riled up. You don't show any of that, because our behavior affects their behavior. So by us remaining calm will help them be calm. And we need to ask 3 questions right off the bat. Am I safe? Is the individual I'm working with, are they safe? Is that child safe? And can we keep on task? Now, you can think anything you want to, but try not to let it show. If you're not safe, or you cannot get back on task, or the individual's not safe because the behavior is so disruptive, we have to take action. But if you can say yes to all 3 of those, we can continue as it is. If the behavior is big enough, call for help. Don't try to do this all on your own. Get the coordinator or the director or the children's pastor, someone there to help you so that you have more assistance. But we also want to make sure everyone else is safe. Sometimes it's going to be easier to remove the other people in the room than it is to remove the individual having the behavior. So we can tell the teacher, hey, it's time to take everyone to go get a drink of water and do that. We want to ensure that we're trying to keep everyone safe, and we'll kind of go through that here in just a minute. But let's talk about some clues. We have to become a detective in figuring out why we're having the behavior. Ask ourselves, what are they getting out of the behavior? Are they seeking attention from you, someone else? What are they getting out of it? Are they trying to get out of something they don't like? Or what are they doing? Or are they doing it because it feels good or bad to them? So let's actually break each of those down. Let's talk about attention. What type of attention do they seek? Is it from you, from the friends, or from the teacher? And then you can ask, can I withhold attention during that problem behavior? Can I not give them attention and allow that behavior to stop? Or can I provide attention for a different desired behavior? A lot of times I'll give them attention when they're doing what I asked them to do. I'll say, instead, why don't we come over here and draw a picture or something? And they'll probably do that, and then I'll give them my attention. But if they're throwing a fit, I may not be giving them my attention for that. Next, are they doing it to escape work? Is it something they don't like to do? They think is hard? Do they need help? Do they need motivation? We can teach our individuals to ask for help. We can provide breaks and rewards for doing part of the work. Otherwise, they're going to be like the snail here and just say, peace out, and try to take off. But we need to help them through that. And then finally, we want to talk through sensory. Is it because it feels good, or does it feel bad to them? Dealing with sensory, it can be too much, sensory overload, or sensory seeking. They need more. So we can then ask ourselves, is there another way that we can get that sensation to them? One way is free access. If there's a problem behavior because the individual's accessing an item or a location that they want for sensory sensation, consider just giving them free access to that and completely remove the problem behavior. Maybe they're wanting to play with a little toy. Does it hurt that they have a little toy, a little fidget toy? We can let them just have free access to that. But maybe they want to go to a different room, or maybe they want time on the iPad. That's not appropriate just to have whenever they want. so that we can allow them to have earned access where we limit the access by them working towards it, using a token system to have them do that. And we can have visual displays helping them know when they can get that. So the important thing is to expect behavior and plan for it. We have to be alert and prepared to react in the best possible way, because you're not alone. We just have to ask for help. But we need to be comfortable and confident in the class with our individuals and know that there are going to be some problem behaviors that occur. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is how we respond to some of this. And first off, with problem behavior, it doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong when it occurs. It doesn't mean the person doesn't like you or is even mad at you. It doesn't mean any of that. It just happens. And think about us sometimes. It can be difficult for us to pay attention all the time, and especially constantly being around a lot of people. And it can be frustrating. The difference for us is we know how to appropriately show our frustration level. For our individuals, they don't have that capability to know what's appropriate. And as a result, they lash out in bad behavior. So we need to redirect. We need to redirect their behavior to something that we want them to do, a positive thing, instead of unwanted behavior. Now, if you don't get anything else out of tonight's presentation, this is the part I want you to get out of it. This is what I wish I knew when I had young kids. It would have made my life so much easier. How many times as a parent or as a KidMin leader have you told a child having bad behavior, stop hitting or stop running, stop doing whatever? Does it ever work? Almost never. They keep doing it. Well, I kept doing that all the time. I would keep telling my kids, stop whatever. Then it finally triggered for me, and I went back to my pediatric background, and I'm like, oh, you ding dong. The human brain is wired to hear the last word you say. So when I say stop, they're not hearing stop. Because I'm telling them what I don't want them to do, and that's what they're hearing, and I'm reinforcing that. Let me give you an example. Don't think of an elephant. Quit thinking of an elephant. Do not think of an elephant. How many of you are thinking of a squirrel? Probably none of you. But I bet all of you right now are thinking of an elephant, even though I told you not to. The brain is powerful, and it's going to make you think about an elephant. Now, what we need to do, and this is how we can improve our behavior, is instead of telling them what we don't want them to do, we need to tell them what we do want them to do. Completely change that. And so instead of saying, hey, stop running or stop hitting, maybe we can say, hey, why don't we come sit quietly and draw a picture? 80% of the time, you're going to get that behavior to stop and change because they're listening to what you said. But if we say stop hitting or stop running, they're going to continue to do it because we're reinforcing that negative behavior. And then when they actually change and do what you tell them to do, we want to give praise and thank them and praise them when they actually do it. And you'll see a big change. Now, the thing we have to remember as we go through all of this, working with behavior, success is different for everybody. And we need to build from the bottom up. And the closer and closer accomplishments we have, we get to the goal. But we need to be a builder of moves to accomplish the task. And we want to help them get that task. So we need to think of what they like and what they can work towards for all that. Now, some other things we can think of as we work through that, I want to just share some general considerations in working with that individuals with special needs. First off, when their parents drop them off in KidMin, we need to consider what the parents say. If they said, oh, they had a tough time last night, didn't sleep well, we'll know they may have a harder time in class today. And we understand if they might be falling asleep. But we want to identify their strengths and abilities and focus on that. Give clear and short instructions, have extra patience, be encouraging, give praise frequently. We want to be firm and have limit setting, and that's set there to provide safety for them. Give choices, only 1 to 2 things is what I usually recommend. But help them out if they're getting frustrated. Let them do what they can on their own, but then help them if they're getting real frustrated with that. Engage with them, help them engage with their peers. And I need you to play with them and enjoy yourself. Have fun with them. And remember, I always say I've got one requirement to work with a child with special needs. And it's a simple question. Can you be a friend? You don't need any experience. It's just all about being a friend. The other big thing, never talk about them in front of them as if they're not there, even if they're nonverbal, because they still understand. And we need to accept them as the child of God who is uniquely and wonderfully made. But then the other thing we need to consider are crisis prevention techniques. We got to be proactive before the behavior ever gets out of control. So how do we do that? We need to be empathetic, actually pay attention. When the behavior starts, we can get down on their level. We can talk in a calm voice. We can repeat what they're trying to express, ask them with that. And we can put our hand on their shoulder, massage, deep pressure can really help them feel better. We can set, again, reasonable limits, use if-then statements, first-then statements. For instance, hey, Johnny, first, we're going to sit here for circle time, then we're going to go have snacks. That helps them figure out how to transition. Transitions are a big thing that our friends have a hard time with. But we need to ignore the challenging questions, avoid overreacting, and again, call for help when we need it. Now, we can also use a bunch of techniques for our toolbox to help us become successful. Star boards are there on the bottom right. This is what I talked about earlier about working towards rewards, where you can, there's digital ones, you can make them, where you can move them up and down as they get stars for doing things that you want them to do. You never take away a star, but it helps them in doing small little steps to work towards a reward they want to. Fidget toys make great things where they can actually stay focused on something and really helps them through that. The best fidget toys are McDonald's Happy Meal toys, and they're free, so the parents will donate them to you. Timers are wonderful. That you can get a physical timer or a digital timer on your phone. Best phone timer for Apple and Android is the Children's Countdown Timer. It's free. It's got a little rubber ducky on the app. And as it counts down, you can have any time. It shows a picture under it, makes a ticking sound. The kids love it, and that actually helps them again in transitioning. The wiggle seats there in the middle, that's something you can throw down that they can sit on, help them be comfortable, help them get their wiggles out, and just stay focused. You need to have headphones and sunglasses because that, again, will help them with if they have sensory problems with hearing or the lights. A lot of times in our KidMin, we'll have lights in our worship, and that can bother them with it. And then in the middle there, we can make visual schedules where just a list of everything going to happen. I love having pictures of the actual events, and that can really help them in knowing what to do and how to go about it. But the thing we need to remember is that every single ministry is different, and you need to do what's right for your church. You don't have to do everything, but do things that are sustainable for a church your size and has resources. Find what works for your church and do it to the best of your ability. Now, before we end, and we're going to close here in just a minute, I also wanted to share with you, I'm happy to offer all of you a free consultation with SOAR for an hour where I'll meet with you over Zoom, talk through your ministry, see how we can help you with ministry and do anything. And then at the same time, I would love to offer you free the fourth Thursday of every month. We have the SOAR Disability Ministry Network meeting on Thursdays over Zoom, completely free. Some months are going to be from 12:30 to 2:30 Central Time. Other months are 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Central Time, where we get with other ministry leaders, talk through what's ever going on in ministry, and help answer those questions for you. To learn more about that, again, you can email us at info@soarspecialneeds.org, or you can reach out to myself again at doc@soarspecialneeds.org. And here's, again, all my contact info. I'd love to be able to answer any questions you have, but I know we just shot a fire hose at you. We got 71 seconds. If anyone has a question, I'd love to be able to answer it. So the big thing I would encourage all of you is don't be afraid of behaviors. work through them. But if you see a behavior occurring in your ministry, remember, all behaviors are a form of communication. All behaviors are a form of communication. And a lot of times we just have to figure out what they're trying to communicate and walk through that step. But here at SOAR Special Needs, we would love to be able to help you and walk you through that journey. So let me just pray for you all real quick. Dear God, I just pray that you bless all these ministries and anyone hearing this, help them in working with kids with disabilities and anyone with behaviors, and pray that this might be effective for them. We pray this in your great holy name. Amen. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you back in the main room. Have a blessed night. Thank you.